We are just 3 sleeps away from the tip-off of the 2023-24 college basketball season. What's that key ingredient that's going to get the Tar Heels back on track and into the 2024 NCAA Tournament? Nobody better than a Hall of Famer and a former editor of the Daily Tar Heel to help us figure it out.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Friday, November 3rd, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen or watch of the day to get the best Tar Heels content out there. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Everydayers, we love you guys. So glad you're here. As always, if you're a guest tuning in for the first time, welcome into Locked On Tar Heels. Come back for more. This community is awesome. We've got a great Discord channel where we all hang out and talk Carolina content all day. The links to that are in the show notes. Listen, coming up on the show today, we are 3 days away from the tip of the college basketball season. Carolina is hosting Radford on Monday night. By the way, head coach of Radford, Darius Nichols, was our host on yesterday's episode of Locked On College Basketball. Make sure to check that out. That game is Monday night, 7 Eastern on the ACC network. With that in mind, today's show is our last chance to get ready for the season. And fellas, I need some help today. So helping me do that, joining us are the co-hosts of the Sleephawk Worldwide podcast, two Tar Heels, self-proclaimed parcel enthusiast, former editor of the Daily Tar Heel, Mr. Brandon Staton, a.k.a. Sleep Dog and national champion, and brand new Hall of Fame inductee, Mr. Tyler Hansbrough, a.k.a. Big Hawk. Fellas, so glad to have you in. We're trying to get ready for this Tar Heels season, see if things can get back on track after last year, get back into the NCAA tournament. So I just want to dive right into this with you both. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to start by taking a look at the big picture expectations. Last season, Carolina missed the NCAA tournament for just the fourth official time since the field expanded to 64 teams back in 85. That was 2002, 2003, 2010, and 23. We just won't bother about that 2020 season. We were totally going to make the tournament. So let's answer this question, fellas. The Tar Heels will return to the college basketball promised land in 2024 because fill in the blank. Tyler, why don't you go first?
Okay. First of all, I think that team chemistry has really improved. I think that was a big issue from last year. Also, the expectations this year aren't quite what they were last year, and I think that makes a team hungry. And I also got to say, I think Armando and RJ are both going to take a step forward in their growth, especially RJ. And I've said this last year. You saw spurts where RJ Davis could be really explosive scoring-wise. And I think this year is going to be more of a consistency as far as him knocking down outside shots. And I think that's going to open up the floor for Armando to do his work down low. And also, I think they're going to take much better quality shots this year. Last year, I think the quality of their shots weren't great. And I think that at times the team played just a little bit selfish. And I think this year that's going to be a big growth. It seems like they have some veteran transfers coming in, which I think is going to be big time for them. And that's what I think is going to make a huge difference. I think RJ is going to take a big step and be a big time college player. But also I think these transfers, these added veteran transfers are going to make a huge difference for the Tar Heels this year.
I love it. Brandon, what about you? Finish that sentence. Carolina returns to the tournament because what?
Because they forgot about last year. I think Tyler's exactly right. I think a big problem last year, and we talked about it on our pod a little bit, was that, look, as fans, it was a lot being said about, kind of what was going on behind closed doors, what the chemistry was like, right? And there's two types of chemistry. And of course, the storyline coming out was like, hey, everybody's cool. There is no problem here. Like, some of these side stories are just fabrications. And I for one, really believe that. But the reality is the chemistry on the court just wasn't there. Yeah. And that's not like an indictment on anybody. That's not, it's just, hey, sometimes things don't go the way that how many of us, 500,000 of us want him to go. Right.
Right.
So it just seemed like in that first game, and, we also talked about this is like, hey, you can't read too much into it, but they looked like they were having fun. And I really like, Tyler's points about the chemistry, obviously, for one, and two, right. They just seem to have that monkey off their back of the expectations that came along, the year prior, where, everybody, honestly, how could you not go into last season thinking they were just going to roll through everybody, right?
Yeah.
And so, hey, like, let your game speak a little bit, and get on a roll this year, and let how you're playing actually dictate the expectations as opposed to just trying to live up to them.
Yeah, and I mean, when you think about that chemistry, I just feel like even Friday night in the exhibition game, it felt like RJ just seemed lighter and happier than I've ever seen him. I don't know if it's Harrison Ingram's jovial nature bringing that out of him or what it is, but they really do seem more connect. I mean, Tyler, like, thinking back to some of your teams, like, what makes that on-court difference as you think about the connectivity that, like, you and Wayne and Ty and Dion and Danny and all the fellas, Bobby, all these guys had, like, what helps create that and make it different than what we saw last year?
Well, last year, that was part of the problem, is I think as fans we're watching and we're like, man, we want to see guys. It doesn't look like they're really having fun playing. It looked like they just had the weight of the world on their shoulders. And sometimes people can buy into the outside expectations that people have placed on them, and they feel like everything they had to do had to be perfect. When in reality, what you have to do is you have to stay within the locker room. And we had such a tight bond. We were all best friends. And I know in today's society, it's a little bit different. Everybody's social media or, on their phones and stuff like that. Listen, we didn't have that stuff back in the day. Now it sounds ancient, but
thank goodness, man.
I'm just saying, like, there was a lot of expectations placed on, I would say, not my freshman year, but my sophomore, junior, and senior year, placed on our teams. And the one thing that you have to do is you have to stay within the locker room. And I felt like last year, guys we'd get in the hole, and it seemed like we were trying to make home run plays every single play. And it's tough to do that. What you got to do is you got to take easy shots. You got to have the chemistry. If somebody is out there and somebody thinks somebody is playing selfish, that's going to weigh on you. And that's going to, we saw a lot of facial expressions, and it just didn't look like the guys were playing as hard as we remember in teams in the past. And that's what's so enjoyable about, especially, I know we're dissecting the exhibition game, but it was St. Augustine, but still, guys look like they're having fun and enjoyed basketball, and that's what we want to see. And as fans, that's easy to pull for, and it gets us excited.
I love it. To finish, I'm going to use the word urgency. Carolina gets back to the promised land because of urgency. You guys both talked about the transfers coming in. Cormac, it's his last year. There's no more eligibility. Same with Paxson Wojcik. Armando, this is it. And there's just something different when you realize there's no tomorrow. Tyler coming back for your senior year. That's it. There was no COVID eligibility in 2009, folks, believe it or not. And it just does things different. And I'm hopeful to see that, as we talked about that weight, that they don't feel the weight of the last year, that it's more about they feel freed by the last year. Screw it. This is it. Let's just play and have fun and enjoy this last go round. I love it. Great answers, fellas. All right, let's move to another question. A game I want to play called New Player Who Dis. All right. So as we think about the newcomers, whether it's the transfers, whether it's the freshmen, fellas, let's each pick one who we each believe their skill set, their role on the team, whatever it is, will be most important to this iteration of the Tar Heels. Brandon, why don't you go first, man?
I think it's Harrison Ingram. I mean, I think he's an intelligent guy. I think he's a big-time transfer. We see what transfers have done historically. And I think one of the things, not to backtrack to the last question,
that's great.
But there was a lot of expectation coming in about what those, what transfers would do for us last year, that it just didn't pan out. And again, the bar set really high with Manek. It's set high with Cam Johnson. It's, those kinds of guys. And, but I think you've got a cerebral player who fills a role in this team that it desperately needs, whose mentality and his body language and all the things we just talked about are there. And our first, evidence of it was pretty good. And I think, he checks all the boxes for me. He's the player I'm most intrigued by, probably on the entire team. And I think he's the kind of guy that's super likable, big time role player that fills a really important role and is a player that fans are going to get behind. And when that starts to happen, right, I think those guys can really make a huge impact for a college team, especially one, that's kind of looking to change the narrative a little bit.
Well, and I love that with Harrison specifically, like at Stanford, he had to be the dude.
Mm-hmm.
Here, he doesn't have to be. He's just part of the team.
And he's cool with it, it seems like. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Like, Tyler, getting into that mindset, I mean, is that a real thing? If, like, it just feels like his skill set translates to be like almost in a Draymond sort of way, right? Where he can just do the things that help prepare everybody without being kind of the head case that Draymond is at the same time. I mean, is that a real thing, Hansbrough? Big Hawk?
I do. Well, the one thing I like about Harrison in particular is it allows us to go small. I think he's big enough to play the 4 position, especially in the modern game today. And in particular, what I like about that is I think he can guard bigger players. He has size. Looks like he's built to. He has the skill set to stretch the floor and allow, stretch the defense and allow Armando to go to work down low, which is going to be big time. But I do like Harrison. He can guard, he can defend, and he can shoot, and that's what this team needs. And he's an older player. And today, I've been saying this on SHWW, is with the portal and the COVID year, I think sometimes people are valuing, 5th-year older veteran college players over 5-star recruits at schools in particular where they can't get the 5-star recruits. And if you look at last year's Final Four, FAU and San Diego State, they all had older players, especially San Diego State. They could have, they had some older guys on that team. So there's a lot of value in having guys like that.
I think it's a good word. Well, Tyler, what about you? Who is your pick of the dude that just fits and is the right combination of stuff?
Well, speaking of older players, I'm going Cormac Ryan, 25 years old, transfer from Notre Dame. I think he's a veteran player. Also I think he can be a sniper from the outside. I think he's really going to open up the court. But the one thing I like about Cormac Ryan, and a lot of people don't coach this or talk about this enough, it's called spirit and the team spirit. Every time I'm in the Smith Center, I run into Cormac Ryan, whether it's at an odd time or putting in work. And that's something about that on the team can be contagious and making people want to work, show up before practice, put in the work. And I love that. And I like the fact that he's older and he is a shooter. He has a big skill set. He can stretch the floor. He has some length. And I think he's going to be a big time player. But also I don't want to I hated the fact that we had to pick one player because I personally think there's a player in the young kid, Elliot Cadeau, who could possibly be our most talented player and potentially one of our best, potentially have the brightest NBA future. I think he is very talented. And if he develops and gets his confidence in the season, I think he could be a huge player. I think he's like a Kobe White, Anthony Cole type mold player. So it's hard to pick one guy. I'm going with Cormac Ryan because I think there's a lot of value in older players, but I don't want to downplay how big time of a player I think Elliot Cadeau could be.
We will definitely talk about our man Elliot Cadeau more in just a second. So Tyler, you don't have to worry, Big Hawk. We'll get you some more opportunities to love on him because I'm really curious to hear from your standpoint, and we can look at this a little bit later. Like just that difference of having a true point guard in the backcourt for the first time in RJ Davis's career and what that's going to mean for him. And I think that probably plays into what you were saying earlier about what you see from RJ this season. For me, I was going to pick Harrison as well, so I'm not going to belabor that point. My bold prediction earlier this week on the show was that he will record just the 3rd triple-double ever in Carolina history this season. And so we'll see if that one comes true. Who knows? But that's what bold predictions are for. Now, with all this potential focus on what's new, the transfers, the freshmen, all of these guys, it'd be easy to miss the core components, the stalwarts of this team. RJ Davis and Armando Bacot are locked in and ready for another ride. We'll turn our attention to them in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode of Locked on Tar Heels is brought to you by Game Time. Folks, college basketball season is less than a week away, and you're going to need last-minute tickets to some incredible action. I know that at game time they have the tickets I need at a good price, and I'm going to be able to see what the view looks like from my seat right there in the app. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for any event you're looking for. Basketball versus Radford on Monday night, football, music, comedy, theater, you name it, they've got it. And in addition to the view from your seat feature, I also really like the lowest price guarantee in their event cancellation protection policy. It makes me feel comfortable to go ahead and buy tickets knowing that I'll be fine. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, fellas. So we were just looking at the new players we think that are going to have a major impact on this team. It's wild that there are only 4 returning scholarship players to this team. We said RJ and Armando, and then of course Jalen Washington and Seth Trimble. And so my question is next for us. So much of the focus personnel wise has been on what's new that I think it would be easy to miss the staples, these dudes that are just rocks in this program, RJ and Armando. And so let me frame it with this question, and then that can open up some conversation about these guys. Which do you think is more likely to happen this season? A 40-point game from RJ or a 30-rebound game from Armando? Tyler, go first.
I think they're both feasible, but I'm going to have to go with RJ having a 40-point game. And the reason I say that is because it looks like they're committed to running this year, and I think that's going to allow a lot more opportunities to have scoring. And I think RJ is going to, like I said, I think he's going to take a step forward as far as being consistent with the scoring. I think he's a type of player, once he gets hot, he could kind of go off. And so I'm going to have to roll with RJ getting 40. Not a knock on Armando. Armando could get 30 rebounds, but half the reason I didn't want him to have 30 rebounds because that's going to mean a lot of missed shots. Right. So I'm going RJ.
I love it. And, hopefully that means rebounds are spread around to some of these other guys helping out, digging down. We saw 9 from Harrison in the exhibition game, 11 from Zayden High. Ridiculous stuff. Brandon, what about you? Which are you taking?
Man, Big Hawk stole my thunder because that's exactly what I was thinking. You got to go 40 for RJ. I think you brought up a good point earlier. If Cadeau's a true point, right, it opens up RJ to be a true 2. And I think last year, a lot of us probably had that backwards, right? We thought, hey, we got RJ running a true point so that Caleb can play the true 2. There was some mixed match of that too, but you kind of felt like they were interchangeable, and maybe that was going to be more his role. Last year, I think his natural role is more the 2 guard, and so he's going to get a lot of shots. I was like, literally, I'm thinking to myself, if Armando gets 30 boards, we ain't going to be very good, right? And that's exactly kind of how I was thinking it. Now, with all that running, could it happen? Sure, but I think absolutely is Armando capable of it? Yeah, he's capable. But personally, I think it's a better narrative for the team if it goes the other way. I think Armando is going to have, I think he's going to have a career year. I think we're going to really find out a lot about him this year because he was one of those guys last year with the really super high expectations. He, I think, lived up statistically to a lot of those, but the team didn't do as well as everybody expected. So therefore, I don't think he maybe got some of the credit he probably deserved. Yeah. But make no mistake, man, this is still one of the best players in college basketball. And, now he's got another year, another sort of rejuvenated core around him. And I think you're going to see big things from him too. But I definitely got to go with RJ getting 40 first.
I'm taking that 40 burger as well. No need for me to elaborate on it. But yeah, I think that role definition is a big deal. Like kind of Brandon, as you were talking about, it really just felt like there was all this tug and pull with RJ and Caleb where it was like, I just need one of you to be the 1 and one of you to be the 2 and both of you to be okay with that. And it feels like, as you were saying, Brandon, I think that definition is going to be there more. And as a basketball player, you need that to be able to know how to fit your role on the team. I'm looking at RJ, this little 6'0" dude. In the past 3 seasons, Carolina has played 101 basketball games. RJ has played in every single one of them. This dude has never missed a game in his career. I mean, we're looking at him as we're saying, like, if he's dropping 40, he's a front runner for ACC Player of the Year this year. So, Tyler, as you look about that longevity in terms of playing game in and game out, I mean, you've done it, my man. You had to miss a couple at the beginning of your senior year. We were just talking about beforehand. You're like, dude, I can't get out there and do it anymore. How difficult is it to do what RJ is doing, getting in there every single game?
Well, not to sound like an old head, but the game is pretty soft now.
Let's be old heads, dude. Let's lean into it.
Just my personal opinion. But no, hey, RJ's tough, one thing. But also that means that you're willing to play through some soreness and you're playing through some bumps and nicks. And, it says a lot about a player, but also being available is a huge deal. And when you have one of your best players that is constantly available and not always hurt, that's big time for the team, and he's reliable. So that's one thing. But also for this team right now, we are facing a little bit of injury issues. And so I think it's kind of good that we have one of our better players to consistently stick to taking care of his body and always being available. But for me, when I played, I was pretty regiment about what I did and who I worked with. So it was a long list of things I had to do to make sure I was ready for every game.
You were an alien ahead of your time, dude. Like if you were in this day and age, like everybody would be like, well, of course that's what you do. But like, right. Like everything you were doing to take care of your body. It's like people look at LeBron doing it now. And it's like, oh, LeBron, great job, dude. My man, Big Hawk was doing this 06 to 09 in Chapel Hill, folks. Let's give this man his flowers. Come on.
Hey, I would tell you this. There's so much recovery stuff. They have sleep pods now. And I was in the Smith Center the other day. I was like, what is this? They're like, oh, it's a sleep pod. It closes up, allows you to take a nap. And I was just mind blown. But also the amount of recovery devices and things that they do nowadays, I'm like, man, people are going to have to recover from recovering, because it just seems like they're doing more recovering than they are actually playing and working out. And it's just mind blowing to me, but they do have a lot available to them. So I respect that.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. So one of the things last year is Carolina just felt unable to close. Like they lost 13 games, but literally only one of them was by double digits. That was the game at Indiana. Right after they came back from Portland, didn't go back to Chapel Hill. Of course, you're going to lose that game by double digits. Literally no other games by double digits, 6.2 average margin of defeat. You guys, that's just 2 or 3 different possessions. I think about that Alabama 4 overtime game. They should have won that game 13 different ways before they ended up losing it. What do you guys see? Like what do you got to do to turn 2 or 3 possessions around and make even half of those losses or wins? You're a 6-7 seed in last year's tournament. What do you guys see that Carolina needs to do to fix that this year?
Well, Isaac, I see the thing, and it goes kind of back to RJ, right? And I think the thing the team was missing last year is you never really felt like you just sort of knew that, hey, if somebody's not having a good night, one of the other guys is going to step up. And I feel like so much was expected from RJ and from Caleb and Armando that they had to just push and force shots. And we saw you get deep into the shot. You saw a lot of that with Cole Anthony too. You get way down in the shot clock and everybody's like, Caleb, just shoot it. And then everybody gets mad at Caleb because he's just taking all these shots and people think they're ill-advised, right? I think this team, and I mean, time will tell, but it just feels like there's already this aura that like, hey man, if RJ is 4 for 16, like somebody else is going to pour some in, man. And I think that's the biggest thing is this culture of like who's next mentality. And I'm sure Tyler can talk about this way better than I'll ever be able to. But if you go back to the pantheon of Carolina rosters, there's all these games, all these examples where the guy that wasn't the main guy, had 5-6 great games in a season. And those games matter when, you're playing a college basketball slate with 35, 40 games. So I think that's something that I'm interested to see this year. And I think you got a lot of guys that are comfortable understanding their time is going to come.
Yeah. And I think, last year it seems like when we needed a bucket, we were going to try to find some way to pound the ball into Armando. And everybody knew just load up the defense inside. And then, you put a hand up on the shot and hopefully they miss. I think it comes down to quality of shots. And I really do mean that. Last year, it seems like we took more contested threes than any team in the country. And I think that's not a good way to approach a game, especially, I think this year with their commitment to running, it's going to allow them to get analytically probably the best shot in basketball. There's no better shot than an uncontested layup. It's proven through analytics. It's the number one best shot in basketball. The second is a free throw. But I think we're going to get a lot more layups, which are the easiest bucket. And also, I think this year we have some older players. I think Harrison Ingram is going to allow us to knock down some outside shots. The addition of Cormac Ryan, 25 years old. He's a veteran player. He's a smart player. He knows how to make winning plays. And the growth of RJ and Armando, I think, is going to be huge for us. And also, when you have veteran players like that and older players, you can sprinkle in the freshmen and Elliot and Zayden. I think that's going to allow them to get more minutes. And I think, the years prior, it was kind of tough to do because we didn't have those older veteran players. And some people wanted to see like, hey, let's get Jae'lyn in there, try to develop him a little bit. But it's hard to do that when you have close games and you're still developing as a team. But I think when you have these core players and these veteran players, it allows you to sprinkle in these freshmen and allows them to have some growth too, where you can get the confidence to play them late in the year where it really matters to make a huge difference.
And you think about, I think about Marvin Williams and the 05 team. He wasn't relied on to have to be the dude. And you look at Kentucky this year, sure, they've got Antonio Reeves back. They got Trey Mitchell from West Virginia, but they're going to have to rely on all these. They're uber talented, but they're freshmen who are inexperienced. You guys were talking about it earlier. In this era of the transfer portal, of the COVID eligibility, where you get old, you stay old, and that's what matters, particularly come March. Be able to have these freshmen who don't have to bear the weight of that is massive for this team. I love it. Great calls, guys. Now, speaking of these freshmen, we're all riding high from the showing in last week's exhibition game. We had a great performance from Zayden High, some flashy moments from Elliot Cadeau. I want to know, is what we saw going to translate to the season? We're going to discuss that in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode of Locked on Tar Heels is brought to you by Prize Picks. Hey, testing my skills on Prize Picks in all sorts of various sports is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you got the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Prize Picks is a really simple way to do daily fantasy sports for busy people. I love it because I can make my picks, submit my entry in less than a minute. That's awesome. And this thing is so crazy easy to do. All you have to do is pick two or more players. You look at the stat that's given, and then you just choose more or less, and then you watch the winnings roll in. For example, I was looking ahead to Sunday. Sam Howell's passing yards for Washington is set at 237.5. I think he's going to eclipse that. It might even be to our guy, De'Ami Brown. We'll see. But I'm going with more on Sam Howell. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Guys, the Tar Heels looked phenomenal in their exhibition game a week ago today. And there's always that requisite, yeah, but it's the competition's different. It doesn't matter. There are things we can learn and take away that are translatable to the season. Tyler, you've played in these games. Brandon, you and I have watched a ton of them ourselves, written about them, talked about them. What is translatable from what we saw last Friday night? And maybe what's not? What's like, okay, that's good, but it's just against St. Augustine's. What do you guys think? Brandon, why don't you go first, man?
I'm on par a line out of Tyler's book. Nothing. Got to win the next one, right? And I think that, listen, and I'm talking as much to the fans as I am, just in my analysis of it, is I loved everything that I saw, right? But you have to stay realistic. And I think the thing that we talked about at the beginning of the show is what we'll close it with is, hey, the expectations are suppressed, and that's a good thing for this team. It takes a lot of pressure off there that doesn't need to be there. Look, everything that we saw we think is great, but we always want to live in the moment and then stretch it out into something that it's not. Listen, everything that we needed to do, we did. And I think that's very important in a game like that. So, hey, awesome. Check that box, and you got to keep doing it. And I think that's what I'll take out of it is, hey, did exactly what you hope they do. Win that game by 16, like it's a whole different conversation going on. But hey, you did exactly what you're supposed to do. Put your foot down. You mentioned it earlier. Hold the lead, close the game, stay ahead, don't let off the gas. And if we can do that, we're going to eke out some of those close games and be able to bounce back from any we might lose.
Man, that's a good word. Big Hawk, what about you?
The first thing is we scored 117 points. I don't think we did that all last year if you combine the warm-ups. It shows that we are committed to running, which is a huge deal. It's hard to get 117 if you don't run. And it does show a new style. And if you personally, I love a team that runs. To me, when I think of Carolina basketball and a lot of the good teams, it seems like they all ran. And that's one thing to be optimistic about. But also they enjoyed it. It looked like the kids had fun and they enjoyed basketball. And it's great to see that. And, you know, running around, the chemistry was good. The spirit of the team looked like it was there. And so, you know, as a fan and somebody who loves Carolina basketball, it's good to see that. It's good to pull for a team that's like that. But like Sleep said, you know, we're not going to be able to have that point differential every game, or we'd really have a great year. We're going to face better opponents in St. Augustine. So I'm looking to see how we react when we get tested. And I think Radford will be a little bit of a showcase for that. I think it's going to be interesting, but I'm excited about the start of the season for these guys, and I'm pretty optimistic so far.
Yeah. So, something for me that I'm really curious to see if it translates over into the season is Carolina was switching everything on the perimeter 1 through 4, and Mondo was fronting the post. Like, are we seeing the beginnings of some no middle defense from these Tar Heels? I'm really curious to see if Coach Davis continues to deploy some of that. And again, as we were saying, with Harrison at the 4, big old freight train of a dude, but can hold his own. That gives you that capability. So that's something I'm watching for. All right, one last game, fellas. Red light, green light, one each about the 2 freshmen. Give me a red light if you think the answer is no, a green light if you think the answer is yes. Number 1, Elliot Cadeau will join the starting lineup by the start of ACC play. Big Hawk, you go. Green light or red light?
I'm going to go red light.
Okay. Think Paxson stays in, keeping Wojcik?
I think it's going to take a little bit for him. Historically, looking back at it, and this has been the way Coach Williams has been as well, I don't think that a lot of freshmen start. I think it takes a while. But, yeah, I think eventually he may move into the starting lineup. But if he doesn't, he'll see extended minutes. Marvin Williams, by the way, wasn't a starter when they won a national championship game. So remember that.
I will. I'll file that away, and it's all about who closes these games. Sleep, red light or green light?
Big Hawk's living in like the Jurassic era, man. In 2000s might as well have been 10,000 years ago. Green light, man. He'll be in the starting lineup by the time ACC rolls around.
I'm green lighting it too. I'm with you, Hawk. You're sleeping in the early aughts, brah. Second one, after Zayden High's consistent performances at both live action and in the exhibition, he will have a bigger role than imagined. Let's put it at averaging double-digit minutes. Red light or green light? Sleep, you're up.
I'll green light that. It's close. I'll yellow light it. It's pretty close, but I'll green light it because you got to pick one or the other.
Love it. Hawk?
I'll go green light. I think with his consistency and size, especially freshman, I think he's going to have a chance to really develop. And also, I think he is, you know, we're not the biggest team, so I think he does give a chance to take a load off Armando. So I'm going to go green.
I'm agreeing it too, and I would not like this offseason. This is my biggest miss of the offseason. I was expecting 5 minutes or less a game from Zayden, but the things he is doing intangibly to help this team is beyond what I would imagine from him. And I loved it. Like, I am so proud to be wrong about that. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be phenomenal. All right. On the football field, fellas, hopefully the Tar Heels getting back right against Campbell this weekend. We'll watch to see. Should be a get right weekend. I got 2 fun questions for you really quick. Sleep. We got a Hall of Famer here we're talking to. How often does Tyler try to big time you with, hey, Brandon, that's cute, but I'm a Hall of Famer. Mind your business.
The Big Hawk is a gentle giant. He's the most humble dude I've ever met in my life, man. Just don't – I mean, we went through some candy calls, though, and for Halloween candy, don't trust him. Don't trust his candy, all right? Oh, he picks the sketchiest candy you've ever heard of.
Bro.
But, look, man, he knows I was the worst player in the worst team in the state of North Carolina when I played basketball, so I don't think he's too concerned with big leaguing me. You start big leaguing me, man, you've fallen far, bud.
I love it. All right, Hawk, here's a question for you. We were talking about this earlier. I, too, live in Missouri, where you grew up, but I'm on the other side of the state in Joplin. I drive through Poplar Bluff all the time on my way to Johnson City, Tennessee to see my family. Where do I need to stop when I'm rolling through PB?
Costello's. Okay.
Costello.
And you go on Costello's. Absolutely. It's an Italian restaurant. My former teammate, Todd Tinsley, manages it. Redhead running back, go in there, say what's up. He'll probably be at the bar. So you'll see him there. Great dude. Yeah. So I'm giving them a shout out.
Man, that's awesome.
Always sit facing the door in there.
That's awesome. Hawk, also, we got to shout you out for that conversation you and Theo had the other day, throwing shade at State. I absolutely loved it. And then all that conversation, just wrapping up all the ridiculousness with the certain player that wound up at Kentucky. Well done, sir. We're very proud of you for that. And so that's good stuff. Fellas, great conversation today. Really excited for Monday in the season. We need to do it again. Always good when we can have some Tar Heel cohesion across our podcast. Thank you both so much for coming on.
Anytime, man. Thanks for having us.
Love it. Folks, that's it for today on Locked On Tar Heels. That's it for this week on Locked On Tar Heels. Make sure you go follow both of these guys on social media. Brandon is at BK Staton on both Twitter and Instagram. Tyler is at THands50 on Twitter and Master Hansbrough on IG. So make sure you get over there. You can follow our show on Twitter at Locked On Heels. You can follow me at Isaac Schade. Guys, shout out all the Sleephawk Worldwide stuff. Where can folks find it?
You can get us at Sleephawk Worldwide on YouTube and Instagram. You can get us at Sleephawk WW on Twitter, man.
Love it. Check it out. Their show is awesome. You won't be disappointed. It's such fun conversations. I love it, guys. You do a great job. You can email the show lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Again, come join our Discord. Awesome conversations. Link is in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe, smash the like button, and leave your comments on the show. Want to remind you, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll be right back with you on Monday to get ready for the game. But until then, peace.
Stay safe.